What terror stalks the villages of Ossington? Who is the ghostly horseman haunting the roads, stopping anyone from leaving? Why are the wild elves slaying villagers from afar with their deadly stone-tipped arrows? What lies buried in the old barrow, and why is it stirring anew? What secrets do the ancient standing stones surrounding the village hold? And can the heroes solve the mystery before a foul plot comes to fruition? The Standing Stone is a 3rd edition adventure written by John D. Rateliff in 2001 for level 7 characters. It's a 32-page black and white module, very similar in design as the Forge of Fury, but a little smaller in scope and with a lower word count. There are several maps, magic items, new monsters, including a monster template, and a new spell. This is the 4th in a very loosely connected series of adventures that can easily be placed in a forested area of an ongoing campaign. The adventure is a little mysterious, requiring some investigation and exploration to uncover the intentions of the villains, and how to destroy the ghostly horseman. As this is something of a mystery adventure, there will obviously be plot spoilers henceforth, so you have been warned. The adventure begins as the PCs approach the village of Ossington. On the road ahead they see some unarmed peasants being attacked by a ghostly armoured knight. It is unlikely they will be able to save the peasants from the attack, and little explanation for the attack can be found. Once they reach Ossington, they discover that the ghost horseman is not the only threat to the village. Murderous wild elves have started to harass the village as well, slaying any that venture too far beyond its borders. The PCs discover that the villagers are starving as the elves attack any people leaving the area and have devastated farming. The settlement desperately needs help if it is to survive. After speaking with the village elder and to some retired adventurers, a short-lived elven attack begins, killing the village's leader. The assailants disappear back into the forest almost straight away. As the PCs investigate the forest, they will be plagued by the ghost horseman, which returns after several days if killed. They will also find negotiation with the wild elves impossible. Their investigations will lead them to some ancient standing stones, a burial mound, and lastly, to the final resting place of the ghostly horseman. The adventure will probably culminate in a final encounter in the village itself, though as we will see later, there are a variety of ways that the story may end. The great twist in this tale is that the majority of villagers are in fact faux humans, transformed from small woodland creatures to resemble humans, and under the control of a retired adventurer, who is actually a tiefling wizard. The troubles the village is experiencing are due to the evil actions of the tiefling and his minions. The hooks offered to get the adventurers into the village are bland, and rely on player curiosity to explore Ossington. Still, I always expect plot hooks to only give hints of how to include the adventure into your campaign. No hook will be suitable for all situations. Still, if the PCs happen to be travelling in a forest, the first scene may be enough to compel them towards the village. The first encounter has some scripted elements and tactics for the ghostly horseman. The PCs almost certainly will not be able to save the peasants, but they may be able to kill the horseman. The ghostly horseman reforms after 2d4 days, which could potentially mean the PCs never see it again. I think it is more fun to have the horseman reconstitute more frequently and harass the party multiple times. Heading further towards the village, they will come across a small farm as darkness begins to fall. Here, they will receive information about the goings-on in Ossington. We see a full page of exposition text, both through visual clues and by information offered by the 2 NPCs here. The writing here is unnecessarily superfluous. Inside, the PCs find themselves in the farmer's kitchen. Tarby introduces himself and "me daughter Tanasha," who puts down the loaded crossbow in a corner and hastens to set more places at the table, a wooden bowl and carved spoon apiece, so the newcomers can join their interrupted meal. The meal is porridge, thin but palatable, about enough for half a bowl apiece. A lot of information can be condensed, not the worst example that I have ever seen though. The next encounter along the road is the Chapel of the Nine Gods, where a deranged hermit woman, Henwin, prays to the gods of various alignments. She is accompanied by a strange monkey-like creature called a Hobya, a new monster in this adventure. Henwin is a nice role-playing opportunity for the DM, and can be used to set a mysterious and eerie tone. Finally, the adventurers will reach Ossington, a desperate place where starvation and attacks threaten to wipe out the forlorn inhabitants. Ossington is an out-of-the-way village in the middle of a forest. The purpose of the village and means for it to support itself are a little ambiguous. The village is built within a circle of standing stones, and some of the houses are built onto the stones themselves. Aside from that, there are not many interesting quirks. A few more weird foresty or Iron Age buildings. Details could have been added. All the buildings are described, including the various peasant cottages which are of little interest. A short paragraph summarising the cottages and their inhabitants would be much more useful. It would also have been nice to see a list of the faux humans and their animal-like characteristics and behaviour that could be quickly referenced. More should be made of the slightly odd way the villagers act, another hint to the PCs that all is not as it seems. Also, naming each building as cottage is not useful for quick reference. The PCs will then be subjected to rather a long exposition speech by the village leader. The text is perhaps necessary as it presents events in a certain manner, which greatly stretches the truth in order to portray the village and its inhabitants as completely innocent. Still, such walls of text don't take into account player questions and are not very engaging. A bullet list summarising this information would be better. Shortly after their discussion with the village elder, he is unceremoniously assassinated by an elven arrow. Fiendish hawks and a giant owl swoop down to attack the party as the elven assassins escape before disappearing into the forest. The party gets confirmation that the forest's elves are hostile and will also meet one of the retired adventurers who came to their aid, the fighter Tully. The final stage of information gathering will be speaking with the wizard Dyson, who lives in a tower in the centre of the town. He has been helping the village in whatever way he can. He appears to be a harmless old sage who whiles away his days studying obscure magical principles. From Dyson and his companions Tully and the bard Cuckoo, the adventurers gain some hints about the ancient old structures dotted around the forest and clues on where to go next. One of the ex-adventurers, either the fighter or the bard, will offer to join the party as they explore the forest. Their intention is nefarious, though. The module includes a map of the forest, which is fine for detailing which direction various landmarks are, but none of the sites are more than 3 miles away, resulting in only an hour or 2 of travel. The variety of encounters possible within the forest far exceeds the amount of time that the adventurers will probably spend within the forest. A well-prepared or lucky party could comfortably visit all the sites within a day. This is a case of using random tables unnecessarily, I think, running the risk of missing some interesting events or facing duplicate ones. If you're running this adventure, I would suggest first increasing the scale of the map, and then convert the area to either a hex crawl or a point crawl. Then either choose your favourite encounters from the table or place specific ones on your map. In typical 3rd edition style, many of the signs of trouble that can be discovered in the forest will only be seen on a successful spot or search check. I would simply have the party automatically find these signs of trouble if they say they are searching or be inattentive. These are clues to help unravel the mystery. There's no need to arbitrarily hide them behind skill checks. Some of the traps and fey skirmishes could be quite interesting, and perhaps more space should have been spent in the module detailing these, rather than relegating them to a random table. In addition to these random encounters, the adventurers will be beset by the ghostly horsemen once per day. Of course, the horsemen may be killed in the first encounter of the adventure, not reforming for 2d4 days. I suppose the intention is that the horseman harasses the characters until just before he is slain, and then melts back into the forest in order to return the following day. In other words, adjust the frequency of horseman attacks to suit the pace of your game. If the characters spend time in the forest at night, they will encounter a pack of hobbyers, the very same monkey-like creatures from earlier in the adventure. The encounter begins with the creatures shadowing the party in a sinister manner, before eventually attacking. The scene is described in a more tense way than I am sure that it will play out. They have a fear-causing ability and demonic traits. The characters may find themselves at the ancient warlord's tomb. The place has no real relevance to the adventure's main plot, but could yield some useful information and magic items. Alas, the tomb is a maze, something that I have never seen work effectively in a game of D&D. Worse still, the map is bizarrely drawn in a manner that the corridors look like walls, and one wonders if the whole thing has been incorrectly labelled. The characters will find themselves tediously crawling through the maze, facing alternating traps and wights, and the occasional earth elemental. Bypassing the maze using magic has been accounted for in the adventure, and it should be clear to any arcane spellcaster that Dimension Door and Teleport is far too hazardous a way to navigate the maze. This is a common trope in mid and high level adventures, where special attention is paid to preventing wizards and clerics from using their spells effectively. This can be infuriating for the players, and is perhaps the topic of a separate video. The encounters and traps could be interesting if they were not so repetitive, but the maze itself is lazy design and quite uninteresting. The best approach would be to forego the map, have a few of the encounters, perhaps make some dice rolls against intelligence to determine if the characters solve the maze quickly or not, and move straight on to the main chamber of the mound, the burial site of the warlord. The warlord is reasonable to the characters who show respect, and challenges them to a duel. Whether the warlord is bested or not, he will offer information, hinting that the actions of the elves are quite uncharacteristic, and something must have caused their hostility against the village. Overall, the warlord's tomb section of the adventure is poorly delivered. Eventually, the PCs may tire of their running battle with the horseman and seek to track him to his lair. The resting place of the horseman is a tarn at the foot of Red Horse Hill. They meet the horseman here again, but unlike previous encounters, he does not attack unless provoked. Instead, he slowly rides to the middle of the lake, indicating something is there. If any of Dyson's companions are with the party, they will attempt to provoke the horseman into combat. They do not want the PCs to discover his fate, for it was here that they murdered him. Exploring the lake, the PCs will find the body of a paladin and his holy symbol of Pelor, a lawful good deity. At this stage they may begin to wonder about the truth of the villager's story, for it becomes apparent that the ghostly horseman was not evil. Burying the paladin's remains will put the ghost to rest. Either before or after discovering the truth of the horseman, the PCs will face a final showdown with the elves of the forest. This is the culmination of the many encounters with Fae that the module assumes the party will have had. As already mentioned, it is unlikely that there were many such encounters, and this dramatic showdown may come as a bit of a surprise to the players. The fight is a difficult one, with several high-level elves, a pixie and a treant, ambushing the party. The party may already be depleted of supplies, and worse still, this is not the final encounter of the adventure. Still, the elves here are interesting and utilise a lot of magic. One of the elves is an arcane archer prestige class, a nice thing to see in an adventure. When I ran this adventure, this scene did not occur, for reasons that I no longer recall. I have no real complaints here, it's an interesting fight. Perhaps some additional low-level elves would be good to make the fight feel like a proper ambush. There is almost no way to parley with the elves. The true final scene is a showdown with Dyson and his retired adventurers in the village. If they have worked out the mystery of the horseman, and perhaps the cause of the elves' antagonism, they will wish to confront the sorcerer and his retinue. With the help of the hobbyers and the villagers, Dyson will likely be well prepared for the PC's return. Upon entering the village, the party will be beset by a mob of 30 villagers and Dyson's party, consisting of a level 10 sorcerer, a level 8 druid cleric, a 3rd level rock demon bard, and a 9th level fighter rogue. Already a formidable force, their numbers are bolstered with summoned creatures. In addition, Dyson and Hemwyn the druid stand atop the village tower, making it difficult for the PCs to reach them. If either the bard Cuckoo or the fighter Tully have been accompanying the party without raising suspicion, they can choose this opportunity to betray the party. Add to this fact that the bard is in fact a rock demon, a challenge rating 16 creature in 3rd edition, a daunting opponent and capable of summoning other demons if desperation calls for it. However, the adventure states that the Cuckoo fancies himself more as a voyeur than a participant. He won't take part in physical combat. Should any of the PCs attack him, he changes to rock form, releases a mass of spores and flies away laughing at the PCs. Somewhat of a cop-out, I think, and perhaps uncharacteristic for a demon. This has the potential to be an extremely deadly encounter, especially if the party are depleted of resources from the Fey encounter. When I ran this in Pathfinder, at least one character died and the rest were close to death. Despite the deadliness of the opponents, I like this encounter. It has a lot of elements for the DM and players to consider. It is the kind of encounter that can be drawn out and wear down the PCs, forcing them to retreat and regroup, and is likely to split the party between those dealing with the foes on the ground and those higher up on the tower. If you are running this, spend some time preparing the encounter in advance. The tactics of the foes are detailed, but knowing which spells the casters have at their disposal will be important. If things are looking bad for Dyson and his crew, he will release a flaming sphere into his study in order to destroy all evidence of his work and plans before using Dimension Door to escape. Dyson and the Vrock could both become recurring enemies in a campaign. There are several ways that the adventure could end. If the party did not figure out the true enemies and return to the village after defeating the horsemen, Dyson will reward them with some magic items and send them on their way. Dyson's plan to create a subservient race of faux humans could continue to spread to other villages, and he could perhaps deal with the elves and eradicate them. The broader implications would be up to the DM and his campaign. It is possible that the PCs are bested by Dyson and his crew and will need to flee. If they return to the village later to finish the fight, they will find Dyson and his minions gone, perhaps to be a thorn in the party's side later in the campaign. Various other developments are detailed in the module as well, such as the fate of the faux humans left alive and the repercussions of the elf massacre. The module requires a bit of work before it can be run, especially in the wilderness section and the warlord's tomb. The random tables are unnecessary and the maze within the tomb is bad. The tone and atmosphere is good. There is something mysterious about the ancient forest and its surroundings. This should be played up, especially when detailing the dolmens, standing stones and ancient barrow. While the adventure is not a railroad, there are certain scripted parts. In addition, it is a mystery adventure, so one must be careful and selective in delivering clues to the true goings-on of the village and its environs. Much of the content is unnecessarily long and could be condensed for quicker reference. Enemy stats not found in the monster manual are detailed across 3 pages at the back of the book. As I mentioned in the Forge of Fury review, the stat blocks in early 3rd edition books are condensed walls of text, difficult to pass at the table. The maps included are quite bad. The map of the forest seems too small in scale for a mid-level adventure and would be better as a hex map or a point crawl. The maze map is very disappointing, and I still feel like it is in some way mislabeled. The diagram of the village is nice, but a larger overhead map would have been good to include, especially as the final showdown occurs here. There is almost no treasure to be found in the various areas of the adventure. Almost everything of value must be taken from the bodies of defeated NPCs. The warlord's greatsword of frost and shield brooch are nice, but if the party negotiate with him, they will not receive them. The horseman has a ghost-touched longsword, but nothing else magical. I'm not certain if this weapon can actually be taken or whether it disappears when the ghost dies. The majority of treasure will be found on the corpses of Dyson and his party if they do not escape, and from the elves if they are killed in the forest ambush. The elves have some fairly bland items, but Dyson and his party have more interesting variety of potions, wands, weapons, and other magic gear. There are 2 new magic items introduced in the adventure: the Undying Staff, which allows the creation of undead, and the Ring of Misdirection. Few of the magic items are unique and interesting. The module describes various ways in which encounters and situations can be resolved, but I think there is a certain expectation of how players should act throughout the module, and there are several obstacles put in the way of players trying to circumvent the adventure's narrative. There is some variety in challenge. The horseman may be a distinct challenge during the first encounter, but the majority of encounters through the middle of the module are not too difficult. The adventurers may be unlucky enough to face the horseman, followed by the Fey ambush, and then the final encounter in quick succession without being able to rest and regain resources. If this happens, then it is likely that there will be a very deadly experience. The recurring attacks by the horseman do create a sort of time limit to resolving the situation. The horseman should respawn every day rather than every 2d4 days as in the adventure. A competent party will defeat the horseman in the first encounter and then never see him again, which would be a shame as the module is centred on him. Unless the party go house to house in the village, they are unlikely to experience the odd behaviour of the faux humans, which is a missed opportunity. Make a list of the strange animal behaviour that may manifest in the village and present these at intervals when the players are interacting in the village. This will help the players detect something odd is going on. The adventure is not as long as the Forge of Fury and could potentially be dealt with over 1 or 2 sessions, especially if the horsemen and elves are swiftly dispatched. Some spells at this level may circumvent the plot, depending on the rule system and supplements that you are using, as is the case with adventures of such levels and higher. Attempts are made in this adventure to prevent certain spells from working effectively, especially with detecting the motives of Dyson's party and from breaking through the maze. This may be an issue with the game system not being suited to a mystery plot, more than poor adventure design. Overall, there is a good foundation to this adventure, with a lot of missteps along the way. The amount of work required to fix this adventure would depend on which system you are using. Adapting it to an OSR system may not be too difficult, but there are a fair amount of 3rd edition specific spells, abilities and rules which might be difficult to convert. But as a mystery story, it's quite interesting. Have you ever run this adventure, and how did it go? Let me know in the comments. If you'd like to support the channel, then subscribe, leave a comment, and you can pick up one of my books at DriveThruRPG. And as always, thanks for watching.